Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In today's video, we are doing something just a little different than normal. Today's video is an interview with Phreakmods, the creator of the Link and the Link EX Groove. Let's get started. So I've had a few videos on the Link. I had it on the original Link and I just did a video on the new Link EX Groove. So we've got Clayton here to talk about the new EX Groove. The first question I wanted to ask was, what was the inspiration behind the name the EX Groove?
I kind of went back and forth on what to name the new one. Because the Link it just kind of grew, and I'm glad it stuck around and kind of became almost like the Kleenex of disconnecting joysticks. Everyone calls it the Link, no matter what, which is awesome, by the way. But so coming up with a new one or new name, the only thing I could think of was, EX move or some sort of increment where, it's a betterment of it, but it's still true to what the original one was, because it is largely the same thing. It's just an improvement. So we were thinking, well, you can increment by numbers, but Victrix already had the Link 2, and going to the Link 3 just seemed silly. So the Link EX kind of stuck with me. And then the groove part of it actually was from a back and forth with Arcade Shock. We kind of thought the EX groove is going to kind of be the starting point. I'd like to, and we can talk about a little more into this later if you want, but I want to branch into like Korean sticks and that kind of stuff. So groove is sort of like the branch, if you will. So think like EX groove that covers JLF and a few Hori sticks and that kind of stuff, and then the K groove would be for Korean sticks and that kind of a situation. So think of it like a branch. And that's sort of where it is. So it seems kind of off now with no context, but as things sort of grow, I think it'll become cooler, if you will.
That makes a lot of sense. I actually really understand that now. I was kind of wondering, I didn't know if it was a Street Fighter reference or anything like that. So what inspired the revision from the original Link? I really like the original Link, and then when I saw the EX Groove, I loved the look of it, but I was just kind of curious to know what inspired that change.
It's been, I think, a long time coming. The project, like I said, has been around for 7-8 years now, and a lot of the things that are in this new version are little bits and pieces that I've been asked about for a long time. So the change in the actual color and the biggest change realistically was the top section. It was to make sure that everybody that had a wine glass grip or something along those lines always had the same issue. They always said it bit into them, or after a long series of play, it would bother them eventually, and either they'd have to take a break or whatever else. So it was always the biggest sticking point, and I just pondered how to basically fix that without really altering it. Because when you have something that needs to move vertically to actually make that action, it's hard with the way that this assembles and with the taper here to make that function. So I don't know. I think it was just time that, this year I really wanted to, well, I said this year, but really it was last year. I really wanted to dig in and try to fix that and see what I could do. And, the bottom capture, the dust washer, was kind of a bite on the Victrix one, because the Link 2 was great. I mean, they came out and they kind of killed it. They did a really good job, and I did like that capture option. But one thing I thought about was, not everybody wants it to be permanent. Some people have mountings. That bottom section doesn't fit well because it needs its own cutout and stuff. So I kind of improved upon that. But there's been lots of little alterations from people that have copied. There was one small cab, I want to say, that kind of did their own spin on it as well, and I did like it. They changed the collar design to have a couple of O-rings versus a groove to grip, which was an interesting methodology to make it a little more comfortable, and I thought it was cool for giving them the benefit of the doubt on that one. But it was just sort of things that have just built up over time, and I just thought it was time to give it a shot and really see what I could do with this, and, try and fix all the little bits and pieces that people have been asking me about for a really long time.
So that brings up an interesting question. Now I know that whole ordeal with Victrix. I we don't really need to get into that, but so there have been other companies that have made their own version of the link then, like it was
Yeah,
just that one, or is there?
no, there's a couple. So it's as surprising as it is, I would have thought it would have been more and faster because I mean, from when it comes down to it, the original version, it's a pretty simple device. So if you have the ability to, have a machine house do it and you have some CAD skills, you could make your own version with a little bit of investment, especially now. Like back when I first started this, it was way harder to do that. But now, people have lathes in their garage. I mean, it's part of the maker kind of movement, but yeah, it's not just them. Victrix was kind of the big ones that did it because they killed it at marketing. They did an amazing job and put out a really awesome product, and it kind of lend itself to it. But yeah, they're not the only ones. Small Cab was another one in France that I don't know. They decided to try and do it on their own because of import taxes and some other stuff, and they were okay about it. I wish they'd kind of given me the heads up, but business is business. So, and they're not the only ones. There's a company in Brazil that does their own, which actually weirdly makes sense because importing into Brazil is actually kind of a nightmare. So I actually don't blame them because I've done that before. This is back before I did distributor kind of interfacing. I had a couple shipments that went to Brazil that just got lost in the weeds. One guy had it confiscated because the government thought it was literal bullet like gun parts. Even though it says like in everything else, it's for arcade sticks. They took it and they destroyed it, and they gave the guy a note like way later when he inquired about it. I felt super bad about it, but so I also know that the taxes and everything else on importing there is just kind of a pain.
Will the original link still be sold beside the EX Groove, or will the original link be phased out?
So I kind of went back and forth on what I wanted to do. It's interesting that a lot of people still like the original one. They at least they think they do. They see the design and it's either familiar or something along those lines. So I'd like to try and still offer the original one. In what facet, I don't know. So the reason I say that is because I launched the original one. I put an investment into it. It's hard to branch and order a lot of the original one when I know that I'll basically be holding on to it. There was diehard fans of that, and I'll try and support it as much as possible, even in a short supply, but it probably won't be in the same amount of colors, for example. It'd probably only be in like 4 colors, like maybe black and chrome and then red and blue or something like that, and kind of keep it on a little bit lower of a profile. But I would like to keep the original one around if possible, because I know if I get rid of it entirely, someone's gonna, someone will get mad about it. And then, I mean, it doesn't mean that I can't keep a stock, at least see how that works. But you'd be amazed at, I honestly thought I would have more of the original one rolling into the EX's release.
Wow.
I thought I would, but I'm almost bone dry. It's unreal. it's the past 6 months have been ramping up, which is really interesting. And I know always moving into Evo season, it always ramps up. People get parts, they want performance parts, they want to upgrade, they kind of want to get themselves ready, which is kind of cool to see. But I don't know if that's part of it or whatever it is, but I honestly thought I would have a bigger stock going into this, but I don't. So it's an interesting problem to have. Not a bad problem, but I know I'd like to try and keep the original one, at least in some way, shape, or form. So however long this stock that I'm looking at here lasts, we'll see.
That's a pretty good answer. So pretty much to anyone watching, if you want the original link, pick it up now.
Yeah, I'd pick it up within the next, actually, it's interesting. We can talk about that when we talk about when the new one will be released. But there's a tentative plan now to, in leading up to the actual release of it, to potentially drop price of the original one, depending on, how many are in stock and stuff, because, I want to release a very similar price point. I don't want to fluctuate it and make it, crazy expensive. There's no reason to do that. If, people are already familiar with this, I want to, that's one of my goals, is to try and keep it, almost the same. if possible, because that's what people are comfortable with. And it just seems silly to not try and shoot for that as a target. So, if I got the original one and I got the new one, yeah, I got to go somewhere here. So I think the original one will go down in price a little bit. So once that happens, definitely grab it then, because I think once they drop in price, they'll be gone. I really do. Because it won't be like a couple bucks. I think it'll drop more like 19.99 kind of a situation. So last time we did something like that as a sale, they went really fast, and I think they cleaned out Arcade Shock like over a weekend. It was insane. I couldn't believe it.
All right, so you have the original Link, the EX Link, and now there's going to be potentially a K Groove Link.
Yeah, when I do get to it and catch up, that's the intention. At least from I think the 309s and that kind of standpoint from Crown, it'd be the K Groove is really what it would end up being. So the boxing would be different. It would be a different color and that kind of stuff. Same aluminum colors and anodizations and stuff, but the actual packaging and all that would kind of change, and it would be called the K Groove. It would be instead of the EX Groove. So EX is sort of synonymous with JLF and anything else that will fit that same base, like the Hayabusa and that kind of stuff. And even the LS32s and the 56s, because technically they'll still, by measurements, still work with that same top section. So those still fall under the EX kind of nomenclature, but anything that's different, especially in this case with the K sticks, it'd be K Groove is really what it would end up being.
Okay, so that's an interesting point then. It seems like all of the tops are interchangeable with all of the bottoms except potentially the Korean one,
right?
Depending on how that one.
It depends on the measurements. So I got lucky with, like I said, with the LS32 and 56s. The base style changes obviously from how the micro switches interact with the rest of everything and what that ends up looking like from a mechanical standpoint. But the top section, from like a vertical amount and the actual diameter are so similar that it ended up working out really well. That's the only reason I was able to use the 32 and 56 bases in that manner. I don't think there's any other sticks that kind of fit that methodology, like the 309s and like the Samduxa sticks. There's no way. The top section is just going to have to change as far as some of those dimensionings is concerned. So I'd like to try and keep it with the same kind of collar style, and borrowing much of what's already on here and just making it kind of fit either by lengthening it or making it just bigger in general. I think the diameter is relatively the same, but that way, it's still familiar, but it's, it just fits a different one. But it's still part of the same family.
So in terms of colors for the original Link, you have quite a few colors, quite a few special editions. For the EX Groove and potentially the new K Groove, are you going to be offering in multiple colors, or is it just going to be a few colors to start?
Probably just a few colors to start. So one thing about the original one is, I have like 7 or 9 or 10 colors, I think now is how it kind of branched out, and it's too many. So at least initially, I'm only going to launch with black, chrome, red, and like a darker blue. Now the dark, I went back and forth on how to which color of blue to do, but I look at my shelf and light blue, one of the only 2 other blues I have is still on my shelf, whereas dark blue is gone. So I have to kind of take that as, well, dark blue is more popular. Maybe it goes with stuff a little bit better in terms of being more neutral, I guess. But so that's the initial rollout, is going to be those 4 colors. Black and chrome are, for some weird reason, chrome is unbelievably popular, second only to black. Black is just because black goes with everything. Whatever artwork you got, black will work. And chrome, I don't know if it's because people like the original sort of stainless. They like that look. They want to keep that. And so that's just the way it is. But I would have never thought chrome would have been as popular, but it is. So it'll be those 4 is really going to be the initial rollout. And then I'll kind of feel it out as I go. But it probably wouldn't be until after Evo to have any other colors sort of on the docket. So what's interesting about this one, though, about the EX, is that when I sent out prototype units, and I think maybe I don't know if the one I sent you has this, but So you can kind of mix and match the colors.
Oh,
Uh,
well, that's interesting.
so on the original one, I wanted to do that in some ways, and I did do that, but it got to be kind of a pain in the butt because you could mix and match all the different colors, and it was a nightmare. So unless I was building them right there, like at a tournament, it wasn't really viable for online sales. But on this one, because there's only a handful of colors, what it ends up being is it's not like a whole like full change out of the colors, but what you've got is almost a duality. You've got the solid color, let's say black on top, and then on the bottom you have a chrome, like a chrome base. So it's a slight like hint, almost an accent or a border or something. It looked a little bit better when before the O-ring was there. Before the O-ring, it was one solid piece of metal. It was sort of routed out so that it was permanent. So it was a little bit more pronounced, but even against the black O-ring, it's still kind of cool. But that way, like your base is actually a little bit different of a color. So you won't see it like during normal play, but if you take it out and put it on a lanyard or something along those lines, you'll actually see it, and it kind of gives it a little bit of a hint of a flair, of that difference. So you can mix and match a little bit. I don't plan on making that some like crazy standard, but maybe like a tournament special or something, because it's not like, it won't be, when you do mixed colors, they're cool to like a very narrow set of people. They love it. They're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love this. But for the majority, they couldn't care less. They want the solid color. They want it to match their artwork. And if I do something that's super multicolor, it just doesn't work for them. So it'll be there in some way, shape, or form, but I wasn't able to do that on the original one because if I changed anything out, it was too much. It was like you change a whole collar and you still have the top, but it didn't work as well. I think it'll work better on this one.
All right, so the next question is kind of a hopeful question, and hopeful as a Fightstick fan in terms of customization. So you talked about the logo, you talked about the potential of maybe multiple colors. In terms of one-offs, so something unique, if someone wanted to make it their own, is there that opportunity to work with, Arcade Shock or Focus Attack or any of those services to kind of do like one-off pieces as maybe an extra price for a customization?
I think so. So what's interesting about what these companies are offering now is, you've got Arcade Shock that has like layers, for example, is a really good example of this because you take even something like the Victrix, which is a solid piece of aluminum, and you can't do anything except for etch on it, right? Well, now they have the ability to put these beautiful artworks over it, as a wrap. So in theory, you could do something very similar to that on this unit, on a Link. So you could actually go beyond just etching it. I mean, we could etch it and do something that's like, total rotated etching, as a possibility, because I know that places like Arcade Shock and Paradise Arcade is actually another really good one because they do a lot of one-off stuff as well. Because Brian loves to tinker. He loves to have that kind of stuff on hand and play. So if you want something that's one-off, he's actually a really good guy to go to do that because he gets fired up about it. He loves doing that kind of stuff. So if you want something that's completely etched all the way around and, or have it, wrapped or some sort of unique way of really making it your own. I think they have the ability now to do that in-house. These kind of machines weren't really feasible beforehand, but I think they're able to now, either because their businesses have grown enough or because the prices of these machines have come down in terms of, just in general. But I believe so. I think if you really wanted to try that out, you could definitely hit up, you could hit up all three of them and see what they say, because all of them have kind of unique things to offer these days in terms of what machines they can have. And there's some overlap, but ultimately they can probably give you something that would be very unique. It doesn't have to be an etch. Like I said, it can be a wrap or, I wouldn't go beyond for like colors. Like the one thing that I would say that would be very unique that I haven't tried yet is like hydro dip, like that kind of stuff. Someone asked a long time ago about doing really crazy art, but not just in one spot around the whole thing. And the only way I could think to do that was a hydro dip. And I haven't tried it because I never really gave it a shot. But I know that there's people like Butterow, John Butterow, has gotten way big into a lot of these one-off customizations these days too. If you hit him up, he may actually have something and be like, hell yeah, I've tried that before. Let's do this. Like, he's like the master of 3D printing these days too. So if you want a crazy ball top or something, he's also the guy to talk to. But not just him, even Jason has a lot of stuff in-house too. They're all tinkering, they're all playing with stuff, and they're all trying to sort of push that customization, not just for these kind of parts, but sticks in general. But it's really fascinating to see. So I'd like to think so. For me personally, my repertoire is limited. What you see behind me is largely what I got these days. I have a soldering iron. I can't really do much with that. And, I can try hydro dipping here, but a lot of my tinkering and a lot of that actually comes from the really incredible people that are currently in the community and how they've just built up over time and what they've got, because they have such great skills to offer. And, just through experience that they're like, hell yeah, we can totally do this. We've done this before on something that's similar. Let's give it a whirl. Let's make it yours. So.
That makes a lot of sense. So maybe not in the cards to begin with, but definitely not out of the deck overall.
No, I don't think so. I think at some point, if we really brainstormed on it, like I said, like layers is a really good example, because you go in there, you customize your stick from everything. I could see this as being like that end accessory, and like, what do you want to do with it? Beyond just laser etching, something along those lines. But we're not there yet. But I would like to think that once I do play catch up and I get everything else out of the way and get that all set up, I think that could be the next step. I think that would be something to try. Why not? I mean, we'll give it a whirl. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm open to ideas.
All right. So the next question is, we've seen the pre-orders up on Arcade Shock, currently listed as sold out. When are these going to be available? When is the EX Groove going to be available for sale?
So I'd like to think that the tentative plan here, and I hope Vin doesn't kill me from he runs Arcade Shock, but so I think the tentative plan here is to have a pre-order up in March. We work closely together on this because I'm trying to get everything in and started and start assembling, but I'm a little delayed in getting my parts just because of all the stuff that's going on right now. So I'm trying to get all that in, and this is not just that, but this is the first time I'm doing a run of these. And there's always you take your time to make sure that you get it right. It's not necessarily clockwork just yet, because this one actually assembles differently than the original one does. So there's a little bit of that, but I'd like to think that we can launch in March and have a pre-order up on Arcade Shock. This was supposed to be released like at EVO last year. That was the intention. And I'm almost a year behind on this. So I'd like to, like I said, we put this thing through its paces. We wanted to make sure that, when we released it, we were really happy about it. And, this thing went through, like, no joke. This thing we sent a handful of amounts of barcode out in California, and they threw them on their MVC2 cabs. And, you don't have, think about worst case. What could you possibly do to something that's arcade stick related that would just destroy a part? Throw them on a general use MVC2 cab at a bar. Like, there's nothing else that's worse. That is essentially just stress testing the hell out of it. So that's been running on those things for like 6+ months now without
and they've
fail.
been good. So wow.
The people like them. They don't even some people don't even realize they're using a different, like a not original part. They don't realize that there's even a groove there, which is totally cool to me, because that's always been, like I said, the first thing that people have noticed on the original is, it feels a little different, but it's kind of cool. In this one, some people don't even realize it until they're told that it's actually physically different.
Did you change anything on those so they can't just pick them up and just take them off the machine, or?
Nope. So in theory, they could basically just pull them off the machines and walk away. So interesting note about that is years ago, Behemoth, the game makers. Mm-hmm. So they actually picked up a bunch of links to put on their cabs in when they go to PAX and when they go to a lot of these trade shows. They wanted these on their units so they could fold over the control panel and make it pack easier because they tear up, they tear down everything and they put everything up, and they were coming up with really clever ways of breaking everything down. And the control panel flipping over and, kind of doing that kind of thing, they wanted to use this for that. But the first thing they asked about was that exact question was, how do I keep people from walking off with it? And I didn't have an answer for them because I'd never really thought about that before, because, you're using this on a personal arcade stick. How often are you really going to run into that problem? So they thought of using essentially like a chain, that like goes between them and like a little ball at the end. So it wouldn't disrupt anything. You could still have a ball top and stuff, but you couldn't physically remove it without actually like removing the chain, or it would like sort of piece apart and you could fold it over. I don't think that's what Barcode is doing. I think they're just kind of on the honor system, but they haven't said anything. So far, I haven't gotten any texts that say, hey, some dude just walked off with our, all of our tops. Can we have some more? Like, so far they've been there. So I'm crossing fingers that doesn't happen.
All right. So we've asked a bunch of questions. You've provided some amazing answers. The biggest thing I want to know is what's next for Phreakmods?
In the short term, it's kind of a multi-stage sort of situation. Between work and everything else, it's just sort of trying to take things one step at a time. But once the EX is done and out and it's like clockwork, and I can start branching out, I think the next step is trying to add onto the family and get the K group going, or, anything else that kind of comes along with that. And then, building that out. And then from there, I'd like to try and get back into other stuff. I have a queue of things I'd like to make. I just haven't been able to get to them. I stopped kind of delving into other products 2 years ago, I want to say. I kind of fell off. The last thing I wanted to make was something to improve streaming, and I never quite got that off the ground. And in a way it's good because it would have been a really, really big project, but I think once I got to that point and I stopped, it just kind of killed my drive. So now that this is sort of heating back up and I'm getting back into it, I'd like to pick up where I left off. Not necessarily for that project. I think that that's kind of past its time now. But there are other things I would like to make. And what's interesting is that by trade, I'm an electrical engineer. So I used to do PCBs, like custom PCBs and stuff for arcade sticks.
Like the Cerberus and stuff, right?
Yeah, like the dual mod boards and everything from way back when, before, Aki Shop had the PS360 Plus, and, Brook now has, their UPCB and, 1,000 other things that they're just killing it on. So there's no room realistically for electrical stuff, in this space. It's just too small. So I have a couple mechanical things I would really like to do. And I don't want to necessarily give it away, but, I'd like to touch on something that I don't think has really been hit before. We've got all kinds of new buttons. We've got detachable sticks. We've got, different artwork styles. We've got, hell, even hitboxes or, all button controllers that have a myriad of different methodologies. Even these really cool, Odin comes to mind. The really cool, like, swap out panels for, keycaps. Like, those are super, super cool. And I'd like to try and throw my hat in the ring on some of that stuff. Not necessarily do what they're doing, but I have a mechanical solution in mind that I'd really like to get done. And it's going to take some time. I've actually had drawings of it for like 3 years now. So I'm hoping to get it done, because if I can get it done and it works the way I have in my head, I think it'll solve one of the other bigger problems that has been plaguing these as controllers forever. So I don't want to give it away.
No, don't give it away. We'll keep it as a secret for now.
Yeah,
but let's just say stay tuned.
Yeah, that is probably on that's on my horizon there, because I really like to knock that out and sort of make that as a nice pair to what the EX is going to bring to the table.
That's cool. That's really cool. So it's definitely something to look forward to. The EX isn't the be all end all. There's the K groove potentially coming out, and then everything else seems to be falling into place right now for Phreakmods. So I'm really looking forward to what else is coming out. Okay, so I have the original Link. I've had that one for quite some time. I've had the prototype version of the EX Groove for a little bit of time with quite a few hours in. No issues on either one. One question I do have, if someone has an issue, do they reach out to you directly? What do you recommend happens?
Yeah, I'm always available on Twitter. My email, I try and stay on top of. Sometimes it takes me a little bit of time to respond, but I'm always available on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, just hit me up and I get back to you immediately. But what I find is that, and if you have an issue, if you have an older unit or a newer unit, if it gets stuck or you have a problem where on the original one, spring pop was an issue where the spring would literally come out and come over the C-clip and stuff, that the new one actually doesn't have that problem anymore. But like if you have that problem or you have another problem where you have questions, comments, concerns, reach out. If you have an issue, especially, don't sit on it. Like, don't feel bad. Like, even if you bought something and it's technically out of return policy or out of warranty from, Arcade Shock or wherever else, just hit me up. I always take care of my customers. Most people, like, for example, if your unit gets stuck and it won't release anymore, there's a reason and a methodology to that. And I'll shoot a video eventually on how to fix that and how to circumvent that and, work around that. But I can help you work through that. And worst case, I send you new components or a whole new part, just to make sure that you're up and running and you're happy, because I really do appreciate the business, because it keeps me, doing this. If I didn't have your support, I wouldn't be part of the community, I think, anymore. I think I would have potentially moved on, just because it's just the way it is. But I love being part of this community. I love knowing that people are using my parts and they're happy. So I will never leave a customer high and dry. Just reach out to me on Twitter, email, smoke signals, whatever. Just hit me up.
So one question, it's kind of a curveball question, kind of a fun question, and that is, what is your favorite fight stick? You've worked probably with a ton of different ones, looked at different models of levers, looked at different versions of fight sticks, trying to get things to fit and test and whatnot. So what has been your favorite fight stick?
So I worked a lot back in the heyday of Mad Cats. We worked on just tons of those units. And so the one thing I haven't worked a ton with is some of the newer ones, like the Dragon and a few of the other like really new, like hot items. But from my experience, the one that I actually really liked the most out of all the releases was the Mad Cats VS, the big one, that you could link two of them. Now, linking two of them, that wasn't my cup of tea, but I just thought it was such a really cool, solid unit. And if you go on my Kickstarter, you can see that like the larger tier reward for that was customized VSs that were actually donated by Mad Cats. Marksman sent those out, and I was able to really trick those out. They were the coolest things ever. And after doing that and getting to try that out, what I did was, that one allowed you to have clear like side panels and front panels and basically do a lot of plexi work that no other stick really had. You could do different covers, but like the little accents you couldn't do before. And I thought that was such a cool innovation on a commercial grade stick that, and beyond being a big sort of heavyweight stick, I'm not a big fan of like the real tiny like drones and stuff. They slide off my lap. I'm just never a big fan of those. But so what I did was I took that and I kind of spun it. I actually put lights in the side and on the front. So it gave it a little bit extra flair. So, instead of just having a piece of acrylic on the side that has like your name etched into it or anything else, it lit the whole damn thing up. And it was so cool to see. So after doing that, I kind of fell in love with them. I thought they were the coolest sticks. If you go into more customs, that's a little different of a story, like the real ground up. You can't, like, doesn't matter what you do, you can't beat a B15 SDM stick if you see those. Those things are works of art. Like they're physically works of art. I have one, and that never leaves my house. I think I brought it to a tournament once or twice because it's the actual soul like sword.
Oh, wow.
This guy, that one.
That is a beautiful stick.
So
holy smokes!
So it actually looks like Soul's sword. I told him I wanted a Guilty Gear stick, and he goes, what about, because I told him I wanted a Soul and Jam, who were the characters I used. And he's like, well, what about removing the artwork and just doing something a little bit kooky with it, like crazy with it. I said, dude, you're the artist. Go nuts. I was like, I have full faith in you. And he churned this thing out, and I was like, holy.
I've seen pictures of that online. I did not realize you are the owner of that. That is something special. That is really, really cool. All right, so we've had Clayton on here for a bunch of questions. Some of those questions were from the comments in the last video when I announced he will be on this YouTube channel. Just want to thank you very much, Clayton, for taking the time here tonight to talk about the Link EX Groove, Phreakmods, and kind of your favorite fight stick too. I actually really like that bit. So thank you very much for your time. It's a pleasure always to talk to you and now to talk to you in person and have you on the YouTube channel. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. It was fun to actually go through and answer some questions that people have. You know, like I said, I'm not like pulled back, but I don't get a lot of those questions often, and it's kind of, like I said, it's fun to answer them. So if anybody has anything else to ask me, or something that's just digging at them, hit me up.
All right, so that's all I've got for today. If you have any more questions on the Link or the Link EX Groove, let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to get them answered for you. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Thank you, everyone. Take care.